In these videos, I'm going to teach you about Singlade balls. And if you want to learn even more than I can have time to tell you about, you can go to the website singladeballs.weebly.com. This is a Singlade ball. It's a very old one. It was made by my grandpa. He was from Denmark. He made this probably when he was around, I'm going to guess when he was around 30 or so years old. What it is inside is a big handful of yarn, scrap yarn, wound very tightly, and then this colorful jacket sewed on the surface. I'm going to struggle with the camera here. And I'm going to show you some other examples. I have very few of the ones that my grandfather made because they're distributed amongst my cousins. My grandpa passed away in 1996 at the age of 96, and I've kind of been the person in the family who's been the keeper of the tradition, although a couple of my other cousins do know how to do this. Here's one that I made. The rest of them I'm going to show you I have made. With a variety of colors and patterns on them. This is the basic pattern I'm going to be showing today. It's the basic pattern that I started with when my grandfather taught me. And I do use this basic pattern when I teach. Basically, you've got 4 triangles on this side and 4 triangles on that side. It's basically 3 lines that go around the ball. This way, and this way. That makes, on a sphere, that makes 8 triangles. So, how do we start making a Singlade ball? Well, first you need some stuffings. And as I stitch, as I sew on the ball, when I end up with tailings, I save them all. And they eventually become the stuffings, the center of a new ball. I have also taken sometimes apart buy a wool sweater at the Goodwill and unravel that. That provides good stuffing on the inside too. And sometimes really very finely woven sweaters that doesn't do to unravel them because you won't get a thick yarn like that, but I've snipped them apart into small thread or yarn thicknesses, strips. And so anyway, you take a nice big clump of yarn and tailings and whatever you have, a nice big clump. It's going to be the center of the ball. I think I may have pulled off too much, so I'm going to reduce the size of my handful. Just trying to pack it in. I'll try and lift my camera up again. And then you take some scrap yarn and you begin winding it around. And you wind and wind. And I'm going to let that roll off the floor. And you wind and you turn. Keep turning because you want to keep it pretty round as you can. And I find that by just continually turning, I generally end up with a fairly good round sphere. I suppose you might wonder why I recommend wool yarn. Well, my grandfather recommended wool yarn. He said he thought it kept his needles sharp, his darning needles. Here's my darning needle, my current favorite. It's fairly large and thick. You're going to be handling it a lot. You want a large needle or your hand will get pretty tired. But he felt, as you're stitching, he felt that wool kept his yarns, his needles sharp. I also tend to like the softness of wool colors, although I can be very fond of bright colors. And the wool fibers are fairly soft and I think more pleasant to handle. I don't know. Many people, I suppose, have made these balls with other kinds of yarns, acrylic yarns, but I just think the results will be better if you start with a really nice wool. So I have many colors. I keep a box full of colors of yarn that I choose from, and they're all wool skeins. It's a good way to use up spare yarn. This is a folk handcraft, and I think just taught from one generation to the next. My grandfather learned from his mother, and they were poor farm folk, and I think you made toys for children with what you had, and you used the materials you had at hand, and you didn't waste anything. So this was a good way to use up little scraps of yarn, not only for the insides but also for the colors you sewed on the jacket. So I'm winding and winding and turning, and I think I determine when I'm done by whether or not I've covered up all these little sparkles of color, and I'm pretty close here. So I think that'll do. And I'm going to take, well, I'm going to keep about 2 arms lengths, broad arms lengths of extra yarn on the end, because I'm going to sew it all. I'm going to anchor all these threads down onto the ball, because I don't want to unravel anything to unravel. So this is how my grandfather taught me how to thread a darning needle. Okay, so I just go in somewhere, pull it out, and I thread my yarn in and out all around the ball, tacking everything down. Until I've used up this long tail. On the website, singladeballs.weebly.com, I've got descriptions. I've got lots of pictures of Singlade balls, many made by my grandfather, many made by me, and I've found some other makers of Singlade balls in Sweden and Denmark, and I have pictures of them, lots of pictures, and a little bit of story about my grandfather. Since I put up that website about a year ago, I've been contacted by a number of people who also have this craft in their family, and just expressing similar confusion over its origins. And so that's why I put together the website, to try to gather information in one place and share it. It's such an unusual craft, and I don't want it to die out, so I'm just doing what I can to see if I can keep it going. I have also had one student where I teach my classes who has this tradition in her family. She has some balls that were made by her great-grandmother and her great-great-grandmother, and those were made in northern Germany in a province or an area called Mecklenburg. So it is regional, this craft, and it probably is called different things in each different language. But the best documentation I have found was in Sweden, and so the Swedish word for this craft is Singlade Ball. So that is the word I am using, and that's what I put on the website. I know that it's helpful to people to have a word that they know what this is. We know what knitting is, we know what crochet is, we know what crown and cross stitches and rug hooking and all those things. When you try to describe this craft, you say, well, you stitch on it or you make it, so it helps to have a word. And that's the word we use. So there I am. That's all stitched in, and the threads are all tacked down. I'll snip this little tail off and save that. I do save everything. Oh, all right. So, first order of business is to lay down the 3 lines that I discussed. The two directions this way, and then one perpendicular to them both. I call them longitudinal lines and an equator, if that helps. I just stick my needle in somewhere, and then I do let the tail end of that get buried, and then I do a little back stitch just to tack it down. Oops, I guess that didn't work well. I'll start over. Let's see if I can do that. There we go. So then I call this, actually, the word I actually use, I call draw. I'm drawing lines on the ball. I just kind of, by sight, I lay it down, try to be equal. I tack it down again with a little back stitch about 1/3 away around the ball, and just keep trying to eyeball it. And then hopefully it meets up nicely. There. Now I'm going to draw another longitude perpendicular. So I just kind of carefully lay it down as I think it might be, approximately equal. think it's worth remembering that this is a folk art, and so it's not extremely precise. It doesn't have to be exact. The result is that the 8 triangles are not exactly equal in size, but that's all right. So there I have 2 longitudinal lines, and now I'm going to make an equator. So I'm going to move my starting point to right about there. And I think it's pretty equal. So I'm going to tack down my equator as I draw this line. And it meets up approximately where it should. And we'll call it good. All right. And so I've got 4 triangles on that side and 4 triangles on that side. 8 in all. Let's go back to my sample. And I'm going to stitch inside one triangle first. In this triangle, you see I've got 3 colors. I've got white, light green, and dark green. Here in these triangles, I've got dark blue, medium blue, and light blue. And what I did on this ball is very traditional. I've got 4 triangles of the blue and 4 triangles of the green. And they just, the blue triangles all have green triangles bordering it, and vice versa. So it's a good way to go. It's a good basic pattern. And I think I'm going to make my first triangle starting with orange. And pick the colors as I go. So you'll notice that I'm going to start sewing, filling in this triangle. You'll notice that I brought my thread out in the corner, just outside of this triangle. And everything is done with the blanket stitch. So I'm going to take my first stitch. I'm going to go all the way down this line. I'm going to go under this line. I'm going to pick up a little bit of the ball underneath. My tail goes under my needle like that. And there's my first stitch. I started right away with a pretty short bit of yarn, but that's all right. I'll try to use up everything I can. So under the ball, pick up a little, under the line, pick up a little bit of the ball underneath and make that snug stitch there. Under the line. I can get one more stitch here before I run out. Nice and snug. Not too tight, not too loose. It takes a while to learn the right tension. So to change out my yarn, I'm going to put my needle underneath that last stitch and go off to the side somewhere, about an inch off. And I snip this tail off and add that to my pile of little tails. So I'll load up my needle again, and I only really take about a forearm's length. I would say that's about 16 inches, 14, 16 inches. Now when I come back to my work, I'm going to put my needle in about 1 inch away, and my needle's going to come up just inside that last stitch I made. I hope the camera refocuses. And I let the tail end of that get buried. And then again, under the line, pick up a little bit of the material of the ball. Under the line, pick up the material, and I sew on down this line. I will show one more thing in this video until I switch. I'm going to get down to the end of the line and I'm going to show how to turn the corner. I think one more. Okay, I've come to the corner and I'm going to go down this line next. So again, I go underneath this line, and this time my needle comes up inside that last stitch I made. There we go. And now I've turned the corner. And I will go down this line, and I'll start the next video when I've done a little more. Alright, now I have gone around the triangle, and I'm going to join here in this corner, and then I'm going to continue with the second row. So let me show you how I'm going to do that. I get my last stitch before I turn the corner. This time I'm going to put my needle underneath, inside that very first stitch I made, and my needle comes out inside the last stitch that I made. And it is joined. Now, the continuing row, I'm going to put a stitch in each one. Oh, my cat is moving the curtain. I'm going to put a stitch in each one. That's how you make the next row. So I go into the stitch, I pick up a little bit of the material, the base material underneath, and pull through. The basic blanket stitch, continuing down this row. Okay, one more stitch here, and turning the corner by putting my needle into the next stitch and coming out the last stitch I made there. Snug, and now I've turned the corner and I can proceed down the row. etc. So take a moment here. I want to talk a little bit about these rows. This is one row. This is two rows. I've started 2 rows. Each of these colors, white and green, blue and middle blue, those are 2 rows of the same color. And you just go around and around 2 times, change color, and then make as many rows as you like. When you do just 1 row, it changes. If you do 2 rows, you get a kind of a bolder line, a thicker line. If you do just 1 row, like this white is a single row. It kind of ends up looking like little teeth, and that's not a bad look. It's just a different look. But if you want a solid line, you do 2 rows. 1 row, you just get kind of little teeth. So I'm going to do some more work on this ball, and when I'm done, I will make the next little video, little clip, showing how to join on the other side. So I'll finish this, sorry, in camera. I'll finish this triangle, and then I'll show how to start in an adjoining triangle in the next clip. All right, I'm coming to the end of getting ready to fill in this ball. You see, I've changed colors. I went from a light orange to a darker orange, and now to a dark red, or more of a wine color. And again, just going around and around until I fill in. And I've got very little left to go here, so I thought I'd just show finishing up a space, and then I'll show the starting along the next side, the next triangle. So try and keep it in the camera here. Again, I'm turning a corner by joining 2 stitches. I really only have 3 stitches on this side, so it's getting very close to closing up. Joining 2 stitches to turn the corner. 2 stitches. Pretty much I have just 1 stitch on that side now. Joining, and I'm pretty much done. I'm going to just close this little space here by going into that stitch opposite. And then I'm going to go off to the side. I'm going to exit my needle off to the side. And this stitch closes up that triangle. Yeah, that turned out all right. Now I'm going to snip off this tail. Okay, I'm going to start on a adjacent triangle. Let's go with this one. I generally try to do the back side of this row first, and then I'll go around and start filling in this one. So let me just tilt the camera a little bit. This is going to get a little fussy. Okay. I'm going to go with a nice kind of blue. So I'm going to start here and go down this row. So it means I'm going to start my thread just outside this row, this triangle, I mean. So I'm going to put my needle in somewhere off to the side, and I'm going to come up just outside there, pull to bury my tail, and I'm going to go down this row. So my first stitch is going to be between these two teeth. I call these teeth. It's the back side of the stitch of this side. So I'm going to go between these first two teeth, go under the line, pick up a little bit of the ball, my tail goes under my needle. There's my first stitch on the back side. Now I'm going to go between these two teeth, under the line, pick up a little bit of the material of the ball below. There's my next, between these two teeth, under the line, under the line, you can see then I've got a row of blue teeth and a row of orange teeth, and they just kind of meet like that. I'll show you on this one that's already completed. You can see blue, white, blue, white, blue, white. So that's how those stitches meet. Did I have that in the camera? Yeah, I did. Okay. Got the camera right in front of my face, but I'm trying to look around it so I can see what I'm doing a little bit better. Not actually a camera, it's my cell phone. Okay, so I go all the way down this row. First row of stitches in between the teeth, the back side of the other quadrant or triangle. Okay, I've got one more stitch here. And now I'm going to turn my corner, just like I did last time on the last triangle. So I'm going to go down this row. So I'm going to go underneath that line, pick up a little bit of the ball below, and on my needle is coming out inside that last stitch I made. And I have turned the corner now, and I'm going to go under the line, just like I did the very first time. Under the line, pick up a bit of the base of the ball underneath, keeping that tail under my needle and that nice snug blanket stitch. And I'll go around and around and around inside this triangle until I fill it up like I did last. So I'll pick up sewing when I get closer to the end of this triangle. So these things might be easier to see with a lighter color. So I'm switching to, I'm going to film the closing up this triangle using the lighter color. Again, I've been dipping into the middle of the previous row stitch, picking up a little bit of the ball material below, and turn the corner down to just a few stitches per side now, and it goes quite quickly from here. I was trying to estimate how much yarn I use for a certain space, and I guess I think I mean, I use a standard worsted weight yarn, and I guess at that kind of gauge, I think a single strand of yarn about 16, 18 inches long would probably give me about a patch of about a square centimeter. I mean, that's just an estimate, and of course it varies with the tension. It varies with the spacing of your stitches. Some people stitch wider than I do, and I suppose the thickness of the yarn would be a part of the consideration. A number of factors that would affect that, I think. Coming very close to closing this up. Range of the camera again. I think that's it. And so I will just dive in here and go off to the side somewhere. Snip it off. So I have two panels done, two triangles done, and I'll proceed the way I had explained. I'll put the orangey ones here, and then one more here, and then the rest will be the blue and green patches. I think whenever if I come to the last stitch and I were to, this would be the last stitch of the whole ball, say the other triangles were done, I would probably try to go off into the same color, like right about there, or I would pick maybe something adjacent to the square. I would go towards a similar darkness of color, so I would pop my needle up in the orange field there, because that light orange and that light green are closer, and by the time I snipped it off, you wouldn't really see, but at least it wouldn't be a really light fleck in a dark field. It would pretty much disappear if I had come out in a different color. So that I will finish this ball and show the final product once it's done. A ball about this size will take me probably about 5 hours total to complete. So remember to check out singladeballs.weebly.com for lots more information, and stay tuned for more videos. Thank you.